All right, good afternoon. I would like to call the November 7, 2024 University Governance and Operations Committee meeting to order. Staff, do we have a quorum? Thank you. Please remember that only members of the committee can provide a second to a motion. Live stream of the public meeting is available to the public on youtube.com at the ABOR Live link. Today, we will start with a discussion with the universities and the board office regarding the outcomes from the most recent general education critical thinking assessment. The committee will then invite Arizona State University to present their new academic programs. Afterwards, the committee will discuss system-wide and university enrollment data for the fall of 2024. Finally, the committee will review on first reading the proposed revisions to board policies 4-323, 4-405, and 4-406, and adjourn at approximately 2:05 p.m. Before moving to our discussion items, we should approve the consent agenda. Items on the agenda listed numbers 5 through 9. Does anyone have any conflict to declare on the items scheduled for consent? Hearing none, I move the committee forward to the board for approval items 5 through 9 listed on the consent agenda. Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? Any abstentions? The motion is carried. Item 1 will be discussion regarding the outcomes from the most recent general education critical thinking assessment. For those unfamiliar with what we have done, over the years there have been 4 areas that the board outlined as being important for graduates: written communication, quantitative reasoning, critical thinking, and civic knowledge. We have already received a report on written communication in November of 2022. We received a written report a year later on quantitative reasoning. Those were considered, I believe, the easier of the two, given that there was other data from other universities that we could model after. Now we are starting to get a little bit more into uncharted territory, where we're being the leader in this. So today's focus is going to be on critical thinking. I will invite Dr. Andrew Comrie from the ABOR office to provide an overview of the tri-university assessment effort. Provosts and their university teams are also with us to answer questions. Andrew, please proceed.
All right, thanks, Rudy. Good here. All right, we've got just a few slides, but before I start, I'd like to introduce Emily Manoni, who is the chair, this year's chair of the Tri-University Assessment Group. The Gen Ed teams at each of the 3 universities work together on these assessments, and we have a sort of a cycling chair process. And so Dr. Maloney's the chair this year. So she's here to help present some of this when it gets technical and I'm out on my depth. First up is to do a quick review, especially for those of you who don't have the whole story of Gen Ed at hand. And just to give you a little bit of context about where we are, there's the actual development and implementation of a general education curriculum, and then there's the assessment thereof, which is what we're talking about today. So you can see there on that timeline the development of policy, initially discussed starting in 2017, adopted in 2019 and 20 with an amendment in 2021. From that point on, the universities were able to develop their Gen Ed frameworks, as they were called. First up, as it happened, was University of Arizona. They adopted a framework in 21 and then implemented in the fall of 22, so 2 academic cycles ago from today. Then ASU was next, adopted a framework essentially the best part of a year later, and they have just implemented, fully implemented their framework this fall. So the first classes in what's called Gold versus the old Maroon system were taught this fall. And then NAU is next. There's where we are right now, that dotted line. NAU is next. NAU adopted its framework right around the time of that clarifying amendment, and then had a revised framework just about 18 months ago, pushing 2 years now. and their implementation is set for fall of 2025. Okay, so that's just to give you a feel for each university. There's been a sort of a step process here. Then, as Regent Goethe mentioned, there are 4 sets of assessments to develop. The first 2 have been done. You see them there: written communication and quantitative reasoning. And then today, right there, we're doing critical thinking. And next year, we'll do the toughest one, because there really are no rubrics out there across the country to model this on, is civic knowledge. And I will add now that the group is actually already a long way towards developing that rubric for next year, because it has to be applied this academic year. And then that will keep going on a 4-year cycle. So we'll have 1 assessment a year as they each take samples. You'll see from this that we're assessing, for example, critical thinking this year, but of course NAU's new Gen Ed classes only start being taught 1 year from now, and ASU only taught theirs this fall, and the assessment today is on courses that were taught last academic year. So there's a transition into the system that's been happening. Okay, I'm going to hand it over to Emily, and she's going to cover the next few slides.
Thank you so much. Good afternoon, everyone. I want to walk you through the critical thinking assessment methodologies that all 3 institutions have in common. We began our critical thinking assessment by convening a team of faculty experts on our campuses to help us develop an assessment tool. We work with respected national models such as the value rubrics from the American Association of Colleges and Universities. And essentially, we designed our own critical thinking assessment rubric that was applicable to our institutional general education programs. This is a singular rubric that is not only interdisciplinary, but was applicable across all 3 institutions. This was a request by the regions last year that we work to streamline our assessment tool, and we were able to do just that for critical thinking. Our rubric has a 3-level rating scale: developing, meets expectations, and exceeds expectations. Each institution sampled more than 500 samples of authentic student work across the disciplines within our programs, from the physical, life, and environmental sciences to the health sciences, social sciences, and arts and humanities. From there, each institution trains a team of faculty raters that are trained for inter-rater reliability, so that there's consistency in how they are applying the rubric to authentic student work. And finally, we report out our student rating shares across our 4 rubric criteria, which is the next slide. Mm-hmm. And that is argumentation, evaluation of evidence, analysis, interpretation, reflection, conclusions, outcomes, and meaning making. The Tri-University team deliberated to distill key skills and competencies, or key skills and attitudes, if you will, of critical thinking into these 4 rubric criteria. And so now I will turn it back over for our institutional results.
So you will see in the briefing materials these 3 tables I'm going to present here, which are the results at the highest level for each of the 3 universities. Starting first with ASU, and you'll see those 4 areas that Emily just mentioned here. So there's a distinction between each of the 3 schools this time, in that the sampling of courses is a little different, partly because of where they each are in the general in the implementation. But also due to other local vagaries, like which courses have the kinds of assessments that we can sample from. So here are the results for NAU across the 4 areas. You'll see they're all in the 90s. And they sampled upper division courses only. And you'll see that's a little different, for example, to NAU, which is next on the list, where NAU sampled a mixture of early and late career students. Mostly early, I think, with a few in the late, if I understand things right. And you can see their percentages ranging largely in the 70s, one a little bit less. And then U of A, you can see percentages roughly in the middle ground, and those were from 200 level, which is usually sophomore year typically, courses, so your second year at Gen Ed most typically, and a 300 level capstone course, so the one you take when you're done with all of your Gen Ed. So you can see a range of different performances across the scores. The interesting thing to note here is that these are not directly comparable. They're not entirely apples and apples across the three schools because of three different gen ed programs, three different kinds of sampling constraints, and three different stages in implementation of gen ed. So it's really, you can't necessarily say that, you know, a percentage point here or there is a difference to the other university. Okay. The reason for that is I just went into here, there's even more, but here's half a dozen reasons why there are differences across those areas. Whether it's the students who are being sampled, as I mentioned, the courses that are being sampled, because it's not the exact same courses in each school. The work that's being sampled, what are the assignments in the particular courses and which parts of those assignments get sampled to test critical thinking, as well as the evaluators and how those are normed. So to have them be directly comparable across all schools, you'd have to have the same inputs, but you'd also have whoever's evaluate them have to norm their grading, so to speak, so that they are doing the same thing across all three schools. And that is not something that's been done largely because the basis on which they're doing the evaluations is so different. Okay, and then, as I mentioned, different stages of implementation. And I'm going to hand it back here to Emily. I think this is the last slide, just to wrap things up.
Thank you. We want to conclude by reviewing the bifurcated objectives of this general education assessment. The first part is programmatic outcomes and assessing our programs to report to our statewide stakeholders in those four areas identified by the regions of written communication, quantitative reasoning, critical thinking, and civics, American institutions. The second objective of our assessments is for internal institutional growth and improvement. And we have had the opportunity to be conducting this assessment while simultaneously launching our new general education programs, which has afforded us the ability to establish baseline data for each of these assessments to which we will be able to return and compare when all three institutions are fully in our new general education programs, and we've started this assessment cycle again. There's also been some very positive outcomes from this assessment project beyond the assessment initiative in and of itself. Our collaborative work we have been able to share. We presented to the AZ Transfer Group on our collaboration and our approaches. We submitted a book chapter to the American Association of Colleges and Universities, their book on general education reform. We did this in collaboration with Florida State University. And the general education lead from NAU as well as ASU have served as external reviewers for UAGC's Global Campus General Studies program. A significant impact of this assessment on each of our institutions has really been that we've been able to elevate conversations around general education amongst our faculty, our campus leadership, and our students. This will only serve to help our students have a deeper understanding of what our gen ed programs are and help our students find deeper meaning and value in their general education experience. So for that, we are very grateful for this opportunity to conduct this assessment and for your support. And we are now open to any questions that you may have.
Regent Penley.
Thank you very much, Chair Goodyear. Emily, as you know, I'm really pleased that you all have engaged so directly in the assessment. That was what we had hoped for from the very beginning, as we talked about a policy at the board level that gave the schools the ability to both address what the regions wanted, but at the same time to do so consistent with the distinct identity of each of the three universities. I recognize as well that when we look at those data that Andrew posted just a moment ago, that the real purpose of that is not to compare NAU to ASU or ASU to U of A, but instead to really look deeply at how we're developing our general education in that area and what changes we need to make to really raise the level, for example, of critical thinking among our students. When we last discussed quantitative methods, I expressed my concern that we were not sampling the same type of courses, the same level of students. And I recognize as well that's difficult because students, while we hope they take them in their freshman and sophomore years, often take them in their junior years, and a handful just kind of delay it until they have to take something at graduation. Not the best idea. Not what we advise students to do, but we know that happens. I want to insist much more strongly when we assess civic learning, that we do so with a common focus. This time, as you and Andrew have just noted, we have upper division students at ASU who presumably, since majors are built on general education, should have more critical thinking capability than the freshmen and sophomores who've just taken a few courses in that area. And again, while I'm not comparing one university to the other, as a board, we should be able to see comparability across these universities, even as each of you at the three universities are assessing your own courses and revising them accordingly. So I want to say this as strongly as I can. I expect you as the chair and people like Andrew and Jane who work in our board office to work closely with you this coming year as we approach the civic piece of this, recognizing that implementation is still in progress, especially at NAU, that we come up with a common sampling approach.
Thank you so much, Regent Penley, and thank you for your comprehensive articulation of this work. It is very complex.
It is.
And in this, our third assessment cycle, we are strengthening our collaborative approach, and we will certainly look forward to continued conversations going into our final assessment of how we can continue to strengthen that collaboration and streamline our approach to our assessments.
Thanks. I look forward to much more commonality in your next report.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chair Goodyear.
Thank you, Regent Penley. Are there other questions? Wow. You must have done a really good job. Seeing none, this agenda item is for discussion and does not require board action. Thank you for your time, and we will move on to the next subject.
Thank you very much, everyone.
The next item is a package of new academic programs that have been proposed by Arizona State University. Please note that the university is asked to table the Associate of Arts in Education at this time. I'll invite Provost Nancy Gonzalez to speak to us about their programs. Nancy, please proceed.
If the chair, I'd like to just make an opening comment, just
Sure.
to remind regents and notify or update new regents on a strategic decision made by ASU years ago, and that is that as our charter states, a comprehensive public research university, we don't desire to have a few degrees or a handful of degrees. We desire to have as many degree pathways as possible for the range of students that we're encountering to have ways to move forward with their educational goals. And so you're going to constantly, the regents are probably occasionally surprised at the number of new degree programs that we have, and there's some assumption that there's little logic behind this. This logic has been central to our success to date. So we have over 180,000 degree-seeking students between our online and our campus immersion programs. We're trying to provide as many pathways for a student to find a way to learn in a high-quality degree program, to then also double major, triple major. We've even had quad majors. We even had quint majors, people graduating with 5 degrees in their own design of their programs. And so just in the context of where we are with this kind of thing, it's a constant thing for us to build a university which is capable of capturing the full learning desires of the broad population of potential students that are out there.
Thank you. Regents, ASU is delighted today to present 26 new degree proposals for your consideration. As part of our annual academic planning process, the proposed degrees represent the broad range of scholarship and teaching undertaken across our colleges, our campuses, and our teaching modalities. And all of our degrees are very much aligned with ASU's charter, mission, and design aspirations. And to the point that Michael's making, as you're considering these new proposals today, I also want to emphasize that other actions within the academic planning process are also reviewed directly by the executive director, including changes to existing degrees, movement of degrees between academic organizational units, and the disestablishment of new degrees. So it's not just that we're always adding. In fact, we're always rethinking and disestablishing degrees as well.
And in the context of the number 26, how many degree programs do we have, undergraduate and graduate?
We have 400 roughly.
Undergrad.
Undergrad, and about 450 grad.
So 850 degree program, just to put that in perspective, which would be a large number.
So the baccalaureate degree proposals under consideration today will empower students to pursue careers in creative economy fields, including costume design and technology, design and artificial intelligence, and interdisciplinary design. Graduates of new programs will be ready for employment in fields of robotics, autonomous systems, and microelectronics, in the aerospace and defense industries, and in the complex related industries of finance and real estate. Students will develop skills including multimedia content creation and audience analytics, preparing them to work in media relations, public relations, and health communication, as well as throughout the sports communication industry. Other new degrees will prepare ASU students to address complex healthcare challenges through work in clinical chemistry, health psychology, and human biology. The last is a transdisciplinary program that draws on the natural sciences, social sciences, and humanities. The proposed graduate degree programs are master's degrees that will provide advanced training in new realms such as entertainment engineering and immersive experience design, as well as in a range of engineering fields linked to high-demand job sectors, including healthcare and semiconductors. Other master's programs will train students to provide counseling and mental health services and to preserve and share communities' cultural and artistic resources. So as you can see, this is a robust collection of proposals to create unique academic programs to support students across a range of disciplines and career pathways. And with that, I will be happy to take questions.
Zaragoza?
Thank you, Chair Goodyear. Provost, thanks for outlining some of these degrees today. Appreciate your time. I was curious, in reviewing the degrees that will be added to the Fulton Schools of Engineering, I noticed that the decision was made not to pursue ABET accreditation. And I was curious why that was the case, and if in the future pursuing that accreditation will ever be a possibility.
Certainly, you know, as you know, ABET accreditation in engineering is a high bar, and we're very proud that a large majority of our engineering degrees are ABET approved. These are new degrees that are meeting new demands that are unique within the field of engineering, and we feel like we want to have a stronger track record with them before we then pursue that type of accreditation.
And just to add to that, there aren't ABET accreditation for any degrees like these, so we're being innovative by creating these new degrees, and ABET will be catching up with us.
I thought that was the case, but just wanted to confirm. Thank you.
Chair Goodyear, thank you. Noticed, obviously, in the materials, artificial intelligence coming through both in the fine arts and engineering. A little elaboration on how relevant and, you know, in today's world, the AI piece is, and are these the new standards that we could see in other school disciplines?
Absolutely. AI is transforming, you know, most of our disciplines. We were the first to launch an AI in a business degree last year, really trying to get ahead of the curve, and it's sort of been a nationally recognized success that we were able to do that. So these degrees are quickly following, and these particular areas are areas in which if you don't have the understanding of AI already, you're behind the curve. We expect to see this happening across disciplines. And in fact, you know, we set as a goal that all students in all disciplines in colleges would have at least one opportunity for exposure to AI.
Follow up, Chair. To that point, back to kind of general education and general electives, you know, or electives versus the core, I would see AI coming into that just as a foundation where Arizona State has been for the last couple of years in embracing artificial intelligence. I'm going to guess, as we talked earlier, that some of those core requirements for general ed would change around artificial intelligence.
I certainly imagine that we will be designing degrees that are AI forward or even AI, you know, aspects designed in that will be within our general studies requirements and meet those requirements at the same time that they're including these new technologies.
I'll just add that we're a contrarian, linguistically challenged institution because we're still refusing to use the word artificial intelligence. We're using AI or augmented intelligence because we just don't think there's anything artificial about it.
heard that, yes.
But we're not going to win that, so.
No.
But we
our
can-
school-
Stand firm.
Brand it.
Stand firm.
Brand it, yeah. That's all, Chair. Thank you.
Regent Penley?
Thank you, Chair Goodyear. Provost Gonzalez, I just want to laud you and ASU in two different ways for this presentation of these degrees. First of all, you've addressed the market economy issues and the employment opportunities for students who pursue each of these degrees, and I really was pleased with that. I thought that made a lot of sense. It helps students and the public to understand why these degrees are initiated by ASU, and it goes back, President Crow, to what you said. Things are changing, the market is changing, job opportunities are changing. A second element of what you've put together here, I also laud directly, and that is you've laid out concepts and competencies, and many of you know that I feel strongly about the need to clarify these concepts and competencies for a variety of reasons. One, the public deserves to know what competencies you're going to gain, what concepts you're going to learn. A student needs that as well. And we all know that multiple instructors teach these courses. So by laying out that so directly, you also help instructors who come along and teach the course for the first time or second time to know exactly what their charge is in delivering that course. I would call upon our other two provosts at the U of A, who is here with us, as well as the provost at NAU, who is watching this and contributing online, to make sure that we lay out those concepts and competencies and we address the employment opportunities for students when we present new degree programs. This is a very good model. Thank you, Provost Gonzalez.
Thank you for those supportive comments.
Regent Zaragoza?
Thank you, Chair. Just another question regarding the new degrees within the engineering college. Is there a forecast for how many students will be expected to enroll in those programs within the next few years?
Millions.
I think for each of them, we have documented where we think the enrollments are headed, but, you know, we only see continuous growth in the Fulton Schools of Engineering.
Right.
Yeah, so,
Okay.
in the order of thousands.
Sounds good. Thank you.
Any other questions? Just one observation for me, I'm a little, I don't know why I haven't said this earlier. I do find the briefing materials on each of these courses very useful. You lay out in a pretty succinct and precise format the reasons behind the course or the program, the projections for the number of potential enrollees, what other universities are doing, is there input from other universities as to whether, so the briefing format is very well done and very helpful. So I'm not sure who's responsible for that. That's probably,
Wasn't my predecessors, I should add, including the individual two seats to your right, when he had a different job.
Don't let him know that, he will draw the compliment.
well, I think it's well done and it serves us well, so thank you. This is an action item. I move that the committee forward to the full board for approval ASU's new academic program requests, with the exception of the Associate of Arts in Education, as described in the executive summary. Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? The ayes have it. Well done, Provost
Thank you.
Gonzalez. Thank you. Next is a review of the university system enrollment data for the current academic year. Enrollment data is important to understanding the students we are serving, as well as being an important variable impacting the university's revenues and costs. I will invite George Raudenbush, the Chief Analytics Officer at ABOR, to provide an overview of our most recent enrollment data. Thank you, George.
Thank you, Chair Goodyear and Regents Presidents. It's a pleasure to be here with you this afternoon. Before I get started, it's been some time since we've last discussed fall enrollment, so we've been joined and had the opportunity to welcome some new regents. So I thought I'd start with just a brief level-setting overview of what fall enrollment is and what it is not. Fall enrollment is based on a census of all students enrolled as of the 21st day of the fall term. This is the national standard that's surveyed by the National Center for Education Statistics and published on IPEDS or the Integrated Post-Secondary Educational Data System. Historically, maybe traditionally, this was nearly comprehensive. Students typically started their academic programs in the fall semester. The fall semester ran from August through till December, and so everybody was registered, money down, and in a seat as of the 21st day. Our institutions in specific have had a number of innovations in academic programming, instructional modalities, and much broader outreach to non-traditional students, which has made the fall enrollment data, it's created blind spots in the reporting. So, for example, with more non-traditional students, you have more and more individuals who are starting in the spring term or the summer term. As we launched online, we complemented the August to December fall term with additional shorter duration terms that started intermittently throughout the fall. And so if those students were participating in a later term but not registered as of the 21st day, they might not be recorded. Now, years ago, this number might have been negligible, but over time, our enterprises have grown substantially, and this is now probably estimated to be on the order of thousands of students across our 3 universities. As a result, ABOR will be introducing a retrospective full-year enrollment report this year so that we can have a comprehensive census of all students that are engaged through any modality or campus across our system at year-end. This may beg the question, so why is fall enrollment important? Well, it's important for 2 reasons, primarily. First and foremost, it's the first and most timely set of data we have to look at university performance as we begin the new academic year. Secondly, it is the national standard, so it is how other people will view our institutions from the outside. So with that, we'll get into it. Enrollment continues to increase across the system. If we consider only those students that can be measured properly using the 21st day census instrument, total headcount enrollment reached 237,000 students this fall. This is a 84,000 student increase from just 10 years ago, or 55.1%. If we then layer on the new modality at UAGC, those students are involved in programs that run 5 to 6 weeks and start every other week. So it's difficult to capture that with a 21st day survey instrument, but using a approximate estimate, that would increase the total number of students that we serve by another nearly 23,000 students to bring a full top line total in excess of 260,000 people. That would bring the total increase over the last 10 years to more than 107,000 students, or a 70% growth rate over that period of time. These numbers are, astounding in their own right, but even more so perhaps when we consider in the context of important benchmarks. So if we look at the census data for our institutions and compare it to sort of broad measures that exist from IPEDS, we can see that during the period of time from 2015 to 2023, all universities grew their headcount enrollment by just more than 3%. During the same period of time, public universities did a little better, growing their enrollment by 9.5%, but our institutions grew by more than 43%. So tremendous outperformance of the national landscape. Over the last several years in discussing fall enrollment, we did point out some trends that have been emerging year by year with each successive report. The first one I'll note here is that while our student population is overwhelmingly undergraduate students, the number of graduate students, or the proportion of graduate students, has been growing over time. Our student population is increasingly engaged through the online modality. We can see here that, in the last 5 years, that population has grown by more than 61%, which compares at about 10 times the rate that we're growing the on-campus student population. With that, there is a disproportionately larger growth in total part-time students. So we see here that, the part-time students are growing at a rate that nearly doubles the full-time students. And this has implications for the way we think about the relationship between headcount enrollment and full-time equivalent enrollment, which is defined by Arizona state statute. If we look back at 2017, 2018, the full-time equivalent enrollment typically was 3 to 4% less than headcount. But as we moved into the future and we have more online students, more part-time students, that's increasing. And so for the census-only students, we would estimate that, for this year, it'll be more than 8% below the headcount enrollment. If we expand and we actually include an estimate for UAGC, this effect is even greater. So we would have a discount of about 14% from total enrollment to full-time equivalent enrollment. And this is important because fall enrollment is often used to sort of think about potential tuition revenues and other things. So acknowledging that the sans shift between those two measures is important going forward. The student population in the fall enrollment data was increasingly non-resident. So 2 years ago, the non-resident population surpassed the resident population, and that trend has only continued to accelerate. The number of Pell students is also becoming an increasingly larger.
Could you go back to that previous slide?
Sure.
Is that surprising to you?
No, because I've presented this for a few years. Yeah, it is surprising. I think it was surprising the first time it was presented at a committee meeting 2 years ago at the Memorial Union.
President Crow.
It's not surprising in the sense that it's a function of the design of the institution, which is these are self-funded universities attempting to acquire resources from all locations.
So moving on, another important thing to note is that our student population is increasingly Pell Grant supported. So we're reaching out and serving all the students that we can, regardless of their financial need. The student population is also increasingly older. We have much more rapid growth in the number of students who are 25 and older than we do in the traditional 25 and under student population.
Regent Penley.
Just a comment too, and it goes with what President Crow just said a moment ago. Increasingly large numbers of Pell students mean we have to provide far more financial aid, which places more demands upon our having non-resident students to provide the revenue necessary to address more at-risk working-class families who come with Pell Grants.
I will say to Regent Stein's point, the surprising thing about the number there that showed the in-state versus the out-of-state is the slow growth rate of the in-state students, which is on our list of resolution. I don't know the numbers for the other schools. I know in our case, we've dramatically enhanced in-state enrollment, but we need to do even more, and there are a number of explanations for why that isn't where it should be. Most importantly is the lack of a state-based financial aid system.
I would just like to add on the Pell piece. The federal, they changed the Pell, the way they calculate if a student is eligible for Pell. They went away from the estimated family contribution and went to a student aid index, which actually advantaged more students and put them in the Pell category. So I think that part of that growth is that, but we will continue to see that over the next couple of years as work through some of the prior challenges with the FAFSA, which I'll add, the Arizona did yeoman's work around that. Really was great work.
Thank you, Jane. Continue, George.
Yeah, so increasingly older. Our student population is also increasingly racially or ethnically diverse. We are having a much larger increase in the number of underrepresented minority students that are enrolling in our institutions. And also, and we've talked about this in a number of different contexts, we have a disproportionate increase in the number of female students that are enrolling. So females are already nominally more than males, but that is continuing to accelerate. Throughout the spring semester, the board was engaged with the FAFSA delay problems. The FAFSA application cycle was substantially delayed, therefore abbreviated. Our universities in those discussions expressed a confidence and optimism that they'd be able to address these challenges. Early data that's been reported by the National Student Clearinghouse indicates that nationally there was a overall 5% decrease in the number of first-time students enrolled. At public universities in particular, there was an 8.6% decrease. I'm happy to report that we saw no such decrease. Net across the entire system, we lost 242 first-time students, and that was more than overcome with additional transfers in and a larger continuing student population. What might be even more surprising, and this is related to Jane's point, because that expansion in the criteria of Pell eligibility just took hold this last year, we did see in this difficult environment an increased number of Pell students, first-time Pell students, that we were able to get involved in our process, in our system. Okay. The university did incredible sort of innovative programs to sort of work through the challenges with that delayed and abbreviated FAFSA process, and as we just noted, sort of came out exactly where they were pretty much the year before. But I did want to point out some of the work that the board office did more broadly across the state of Arizona. So the ABOR had received a $500,000 grant from the governor's office and a separate $1 million grant from the United States Department of Education. These grants were used to fund 51 high school counselors to remain in place through the summer to assist students in their FAFSA completions. It also allowed us to partner with other college access organizations statewide to scale their FAFSA outreach efforts. It enabled us to fund and conduct nearly 1,000 virtual and phone FAFSA assistance appointments, as well as host 9 regional FAFSA workshops. Those were both in English and in Spanish. And lastly, to conduct a statewide media and communications campaign, which included radio, television, billboards, direct mailers, social media ads, and search optimization. In the final analysis, Arizona's FAFSA completion rate surged between April 30th and September 30th by more than 20 percentage points. We had been, at the time of April 30 points behind where we had been the prior year. And so we closed that gap to be just a few percentage points behind. In the end, Arizona had about 4,000 fewer high school seniors complete the FAFSA last year than in the previous cycle, but that actually ranks Arizona 23rd nationally, as many states weren't able to sort of maintain levels. And that data comes to us from the National College Access Network.
Which is way up, right, George, from where we used to be?
Oh, well, yeah, I mean, in terms of FAFSA completion, unfortunately, Arizona had ranked 46th.
Yeah.
So on a relative basis and in comparison to that level of performance, we've certainly gained ground in a difficult environment. So on that upbeat note, I'll conclude my comments and sit for questions.
It's a disaster to jump this up.
Questions from the regents? President Crow?
I don't have a question, but just another data point. So the numbers that are in George's report are for our degree-seeking students. ASU also has 500,000 other registered people taking only courses, not in degree programs. We use that additional student body to then also have a pathway for students to earn their way into the university. So that's what the Regents will recall, that's our Pathways program. And so those individuals, those 500,000 people, are a part of. Several tens of thousands of them are in advanced microelectronics training or some other kinds of program. And so there are more people being quote unquote educated by your universities. I'm sure this is true at the other universities also. But for us, these are the degree seekers that have been admitted to the university versus all of the learners. So we have a terminology that's not the best terminology, but we call them students and we call the others learners. We have to have it. Is the provost laughing?
Yeah, it's a provost laugh.
We don't know what to say. So there's degree seekers and others. Maybe that's
And to further elaborate on Dr. Crow's points, in this presentation, he speaking a few moments ago, noted 180,000 student enrollment, and that was ASU's full year enrollment for degree-seeking students. Here in the fall enrollment report, the numbers, I think right around 140. So we have a big blind spot to sort of the ASU students that subsequently enroll in fall 2 and spring 1.
So we have massive graduation in December, then we have another graduation in May. We have more students who start in the spring and then join us in different kinds of ways. We have students that start in the summer. So the notion of the traditional measurement of these numbers doesn't capture the totality of our annual effort.
And so I think we're excited to have the opportunity to sort of take that on and provide a more comprehensive and accurate accounting at year end, looking backwards when we know the full detail of all enrolled students through the course of the 12-month academic year.
Chair.
Other questions? Fred?
Yeah.
Or Regent Duval, excuse me.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Let me follow up on the FAFSA question. So in following up on Regent Penley's point, so it was a 23% increase year over year. We started at 47th against the net. Am I right?
No,
Go
I'm
ahead.
sorry. Arizona was ranked 23rd in terms of its year-to-year change
It's
from
year-to-year.
4 to 5.
Got it, okay.
Right,
And so
we-
we can assume that we will move off our 46th overall ranking.
We would hope, yeah.
Yeah. Out of this exercise, have we developed competitive tools that will give us momentum to continue to move up in this spot where, we have been at the bottom?
Well, I don't know to what extent the regions have been briefed on our Arizona College Connect platform as one example. So when we absorbed the Arizona Higher Education Commission, I think it was the name of the former agency, we took on the responsibility of reporting FAFSA completion rates across the state to high schools. We sort of re-engineered how that whole thing happens. We got an investment from Helios that helped us to contract with Microsoft, and this system is now accessed by, I think it's more than 250 high schools, and it's accessed regularly because they're in there checking like each, it has each individual student, or they can actually look at subgroups like economically disadvantaged students, Hispanic students, English language learners, what their FAFSA completion rates are. So that infrastructure is in place and ongoing, right? And we're sort of building on it, which brings more and more eyeballs onto the tool and more and more people engaging with FAFSA completion data as one example.
Right. I guess, Mr. Chair, follow up. So this has been a mystery to me because, we've been after it. Helios's tools are state of the art, to be sure. Are there other systemic barriers for us that we can address at a board level, be it public policy or other tools that keep us from moving faster towards the national average in FAFSA completion? I mean, just because, obviously, given the economic demographics of Arizona, FAFSA is a critical accelerant in our getting to college completion, and we won't get to a better college completion unless we move the FAFSA number.
Conversationally, obviously, if students aren't aware of what kind of financial support they might have in pursuing their post-secondary ambitions, it's really already like something that's going to sort of deter them, right? But as more students complete the FAFSA, then they get notified, hey, college is in fact possible, whether that be community college, one of our public universities, or what have you. I'm not the attainment expert, so I apologize that I can't really speak to that well. I defer to anybody else on the board office who would want to take that question.
I can add a few things, Chad, if it's okay. Many states have a requirement that students complete the FAFSA for high school graduation. And this last year with the challenges, they continued to do so, and they were able to continue to increase their numbers. So that's always an opportunity where we could work with the department in the state of Arizona of Education to see if that is a possibility. Another is many schools require a FAFSA even for a scholarship, even if they are need blind. So that is another opportunity to increase FAFSA completion. I do think that with the amount of work that the board staff, Sarah and Julie and others have done with communication and collaboration with institutions, there currently is a lot of work going on around FAFSA completion. And certainly if we can get into the schools earlier and do some FAFSA education, that will also help. But I think one of the biggest things is really getting that policy that students complete the FAFSA for high school graduation.
Yeah. Or driver's licenses, in the case of Louisiana.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
But I'll just add one additional comment. In the first year that the board oversaw the FAFSA information distribution, we saw, I think it was a 5% increase in the number of FAFSA submitted. Then year two, we have this differential outperformance versus other states. So we're starting to build momentum, and we'll just have to add more programs. And
Chair, with your indulgence.
Regent Pacheco. Yeah.
Just very quickly, when you said earlier, Jane, what do you mean by that, to get into the schools earlier?
Well, just with like our academic criteria to get into the institution, the ability to talk to students.
But at what date? Like, I don't know when we go now, so are we going in March?
The high schools work closely with the universities, and they let them in and they mainly are talking to your sophomore, junior, senior class. If we could get in early, like 8th grade, and talk to those students
not
leaving the
every
8th
year,
grade,
but-
going into high school about both academic requirements and ways to afford school, financial aid, I think we would generate a lot more, number one, students that are ready, academically ready to come to the institutions, and also are financially informed about it.
Have we tried to do that? Is there a reason that we're not?
I don't know if Kent or one of the enrollment managers is here that wants to speak to that.
Vice
Is
President
that Sarah?
Dan Hopkins, who's Vice President for Enrollment at ASU.
Sarah, I think, or?
Good afternoon, Regents. We do have in Jim Run's area an enterprise called Educational Outreach. And that team works very closely in what I would consider K through 12 outreach. We have to start our work with our citizens, their parents, much earlier than the 11th or 12th grade as they're preparing to apply for admission or to submit FAFSA. So I think,
I understand that, but I'm trying to figure out, from Jane's comment, when do we actually go? And have we asked to go earlier? And if we haven't asked to go earlier, there might be a good reason why. And I just would like to understand that.
to be very specific to you, our work starts in the high schools in that junior and senior year as it relates specifically to FAFSA completion. So we do FAFSA completion workshops,
Why
we
don't
do
you start in
gatherings.
7th grade?
I'm sorry?
Why don't you start in the 7th grade?
There are events and programs that lead toward that. And that's why we're trying to build that momentum, just like we are trying to get more.
I don't want to put you on the spot.
Yeah, no, you're not putting me on the spot.
Because I want to know, like, so if starting earlier is one of the things, the very easy things that we can do to help Arizona students matriculate, why are we starting in 11th and 12th grade versus 7th grade? And why wouldn't we be doing 7th grade appropriate language, et cetera, of what you're doing in 11th and 12th grade?
Which we do in our educational outreach programs.
So it's already happening.
It is. It's getting college ready, it's getting financial aid ready.
So Jane, is that what your understanding is?
There is a lot of that at all three of the institutions. It's, I would not say in an equal manner, but we have like the federal TRIO programs, some other programs at the institutions like the STAR program, et cetera. But I don't think, I know we are not touching all of the students that we can or as many that we can. But ASU does have a very robust early outreach program. But again, we're not reaching as many as we
And
can.
does the U of A and NAU have?
They do have programs as well.
Okay.
Now,
I get the sense that there's
NAU
something
is in
lacking.
a rural
Yeah.
community, so of course theirs
Wow.
is a little bit more limited.
But, so that's not
yeah.
lacking. That is something
Yeah.
that we're doing that's moving the ball.
It's, yes, they are doing it. I didn't mean to say that they were not.
Okay.
But the more we can touch, the better off we will all will be.
Thank you.
So I want to be less optimistic about this than this conversation, because there is a cultural issue in Arizona by our estimation, and that is we have robust programs that we've deployed. We have large increases in our freshman class from Arizona. We have large increases in our enrollment from Arizona as a result of fighting through significant resistance. And the resistance looks something like this. So at the community colleges in other states, you push a button to apply from the community college to the local public universities. Not done here. It's been impossible to facilitate how that to happen. We're listed among another 125 other colleges that a community college student could ultimately apply to, as opposed to in a state like Texas or California. There's two big states on either side of us. You just push the button and then it assesses your system and you apply to Cal State Fullerton or you apply to UCLA or whatever,
But why don't we do that? Why has it?
because they refuse,
Who's they?
the community colleges.
So they unilaterally are saying we're not going to do that.
Correct.
And
And
have
so,
we
and
gone
so
and asked
let me
their
take it
board?
even further.
But have we talked to their board?
We have members of our staff on their board.
Then why aren't they whipping votes to change that?
That's what we were talking about.
And so I don't want to get into the details. What I want to say is that there's another issue.
I'm sorry, I want to get into the details because I want to understand how we can solve these problems.
Yeah, and so the one thing that the Board of Regents can do is take on this issue. And so the issue is one of the following. So in California, every student in the 10th grade in the state of California gets a letter from the president of the California State University system indicating what they specifically need to do to be admitted to the California State University system. No such letters are permitted here.
What do you mean permitted by whom?
We're not allowed to write to the students. We can't get their names.
But so the
By the school
superintendent,
districts.
yeah, the superintendent of public instruction has all of those names. He
No.
won't give it to him?
Correct.
So,
Okay, well, fortunately, he's on our board, so we can actually talk to him
But
about that.
individual, these are things, I'm giving you the list of all the things we've tried.
so if I may,
So if a human, though, is making those decisions, we need to find out which human, and we need to talk to him about it.
I'll just say that there's a much longer list of these same things, and so I think it's worthy of some focused attention.
Chad?
so, thank you, Chair. So to bring some closure to this, I think President Crow brings a lot of good points up. I think Regent Pacheco has a lot of good insight here. I want to be clear that last spring, we faced a crisis. We did not waste that crisis. We partnered with the governor's office, who gave us $500,000 in a tight budget to work on FAFSA issues. We have started to build the coalition. I've been doing this for 15 years. What I will tell you is in Arizona, we have 100 different individuals doing dispersed things. What we have tried to do, the ABOR office, is become the convener and become the facilitator where everybody can start to work on these very issues. So, for example, for a half a decade, ASU could not get names of students, all of that. We have worked with the Department of Education through a collaboration. They are now getting those names to be able to recruit those students. Regent Pacheco brings up a number of big issues. Sarah and her team and attainment are working on this, and everything from creating the AZ, College Ready AZ website to the Arizona College Connect, which now pipes in this information directly to guidance counselors free of charge. So where I need to say something, we've been talking about Arizona was 46th in FAFSA completions. I was told by Julie Sines, who runs our program, that actually we're 49th. The fact that we gained 5% in a year shows that this is working. We look forward to collaborating more with the governor's office, with the universities who do a tremendous amount of work, and our own efforts at ABOR to come back and report to you regularly, because we're going to live and die in enrollment over the next half decade based on the work that's being done today.
So we are reaching out to those students.
We have begun the process, yes.
Okay.
And Sarah can give you a full briefing on that.
Chair Mata?
Yeah, so Jane, thank you, Chad. You mentioned that we have been reaching out to even parents. Do we have the Parents Academy in each university? Because we have to start like the 7th grade or maybe below?
I do not believe that the school districts give us parent email addresses. If we have addresses, it can be sent to the parents of, but the school districts we do not get parent email addresses. The universities can engage in other ways to get parent email addresses. They invite parents, of course, to all the events that they conduct, whether on campus or at the high schools. Parents can attend those if they wish.
Mm-hmm. So we have all the enrollment team on Zoom. And so what do you do? Because, it starts with parents, to engage and see how they can make sure that the kids, take the route. And by the time we're in the high school, they are prepared to be able to be college ready, correct? So can you expand on that?
I am going to ask Annika Olson at NAU to expand on that outreach.
Great, thanks, Jane. Good to see you all remotely, Regents. I think all of us go out into the junior highs, and we do too at NAU. We just started a program a couple years ago where we bring every 7th grader in Flagstaff to campus to start that conversation and follow up with a parent program. I think one of the other things that to be aware of is the scale issue. Each one of us in each institution does great, But it is a scale issue between really reaching out to those 11th and 12th graders, which are critical for our enrollment efforts in the next year or two, and balancing that out with the early outreach. So I think that's a balance we're all trying to manage and put our best foot forward and utilize our resources in the best possible way to balance near-term enrollment as well as further out enrollment. The challenge with ADE and Regent Pacheco, I'm really excited to see you're passionate about this. This is something that Kent Casey and I, for a decade, have been looking to streamline and use technology. So when a student registers at an Arizona high school and their parent registers them, they can just simply click yes or no, send my kids information. And we've worked in different ways to get that information, but there is no really streamlined way to do that. And our partners on the ABOR staff have been super supportive of that work. We've tried lots of different tactics. We stand ready to re-energize those conversations because we know early, often, and just-in-time information for students and parents is critical to build a college-going culture. I can go on for days, but I'm going to leave it there and take any questions or turn it over to Casey.
We are running out of time. So, Kent, you have actually physically moved.
I was told.
Okay. So, without objection, Kent, we're going to give you the final word on this subject. So,
I think you've heard very good components to solutions. I would add one more component. We have to increase the participation rates in post-secondary education in this state as an economic driver for the state. But many of our students are not getting to that threshold. And so about 46% of our high school seniors graduate with the requirements to be eligible for participation in post-secondary education. So to me, this is an and. FAFSA is extremely important. I went to school on FAFSA. I'm a Pell Grant student. I'm a work study student. At the same time, we've got to get students in college preparatory curriculum and have them do really well. It's an and. And so I just think we need to be really sensitive to the myriad of issues that we need to partner on with the governor's office, with ABOR, because education is an economic driver. And if we can get more students university ready, we'll have a better state.
Just to put that statistic in context, it's one of the 5 lowest percentage of high school graduates that are eligible to go to college in the country. So most of the people, almost half the people are not even qualified to go to college.
that is the final word on this subject. This is an agenda item for discussion only and does not require board action. Our last item is a review of the proposed revisions to board policies for, thank you, George, by the way.
Yep.
4-323, 4-405, 4-406 on first reading. Kevin Smith from the board office will present this item. Kevin?
Thank you, Chair Goodyear, members of the committee. The board office asks the committee to review and forward to the full board on first reading proposed revisions to board policies 4-323, 4-405, 4-406, as set forth in the executive summary. These amendments address changes in the law from the 2024 legislative session. The revisions of policies 4-323 and 4-405 address the newly enacted tuition waiver scholarship for spouses and dependents of police, fire, and military personnel who suffered a post-traumatic stress injury in the line of duty and subsequently died by suicide. Excuse me a moment. The revisions to policy 4-406 moves up the repeal date of the law enforcement officers' spouses and dependent tuition scholarship from the current end date of June 30th, 2027 to new end date of June 30th, 2025. All unexpended and unencumbered monies remaining in the scholarship fund as of that date revert to the state general fund. Does the committee have any questions?
Hearing none, this is an action item. I move that the committee forward to the full board for first reading the proposed revisions to ABOR policies 4-323, tuition waiver scholarships and institutionally supported financial aid programs, student financial aid, 4-405, spouses of military veterans tuition scholarship, and 4-406, law enforcement officers spouse and dependents tuition scholarship, as described in the executive summary. Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstention? Motion carries. It will be forwarded to the full board for consideration. Thank you, Kevin.
Thank you.
We're nearing the end of this meeting. I do want to close with one remark. Earlier this month, President Crow pointed out to us a program in Georgia that that matches students for admission with Georgia's state colleges. Shortly after he brought that to our attention, Regent Penley said, this is a really good idea. We should pursue this with greater intensity. So two of the smartest people I know think something is a good idea. I would like to ask our board office to look into this program and to help see what, if anything, we can do. We always want to be learning from the positive programs of other states. We don't need to create every good idea. I'm happy to steal them or borrow them. And given the source of the suggestions, I think it's something the board needs to look into. Regent Penley?
Indeed. Thank you, Chair Goodyear. It really, this issue relates to the passionate discussion that we just had a few moments ago and the challenges of really raising the number of college-going students who graduate from our high schools or who should graduate from our high schools in Arizona. With that nearly flat line that George showed you a little earlier in one of the graphs with regard to resident students. This is a very complex and difficult issue because of the way we don't have access, as President Crow said, easily to student names, addresses, and the ability to support them. We don't have support from all superintendents, nor all boards in the state. Boards and superintendents can resist our efforts to reach back into these schools because they fear exposing students' public information.
And their underperformance of their schools.
And their underperformance. Yes, thank you, President Crow. So I completely concur with you, Regent Goodyear. We should charge ourselves and the board office with really looking at all of the levers that we can use, including going to the superintendents and board members' annual meetings and addressing that directly. We also face the challenge with what with what was raised a few moments ago too about the 7th and 8th grade. In some districts, we don't have unified high school districts. We have a separate elementary district and a separate high school district. The separate elementary district, in one example I know, has no interest in talking to the Board of Regents. No interest in focuses on universities. They don't see that as their responsibility. They see that as the high school responsibility. So we have a long way to go. If we're going to address this, it has to become a major initiative for the board, and we have to put resources of staff behind it.
Just very quickly, so with the Helios Foundation, ASU has been running the ASU Helios Decision Center for Education the last couple of years. It has all the school districts, all the data, all the students, all the issues, and they're working with superintendents, and so regents and staff might benefit from going over to that decision theater on 32nd Street and sitting there and looking at some of these things. And then secondly, relative to Georgia, chair of the Georgia Board of Regents, Harold Reynolds, and the chancellor, former governor, and Senator Sonny Perdue, they just spent 3 days here at ASU recently, and so I'm sure would be welcome to.
And I met with them, and they were very impressed with what we're doing as a board, by the way. And just to add to what President Crow said, ASU has been very aggressive, but that aggression focuses on working school district by school district by school district to accomplish what they have accomplished. We're going to have to, in addition to developing a strategic initiative here, really call on the presidents of the other two institutions to really address this very aggressively as well. Because the most aggressive addressing of this is done by Arizona State University and not just in Maricopa County. And that has implications for the other two
Well,
universities.
the center is an ASU center, but it's open to anyone. It's open to all the universities, all the colleges, all the school districts.
Personally, I have wanted us as a board to meet at Helios and really see the data. It is so extraordinary that it's worth the time of this board to sit there and have people show you what you can do, just as President Crow has stated.
That is the final word, Regent Penley. Thus concludes the committee meeting. Chair Mata,
Thank you.
the gavel is yours.